about half an hour talking about the main ideas of the book, and then we'll have more of a discussion. So this book is, I know some of you have seen a discussion on TV, etc. Much of it has to do with the Congress minimum income guarantee scheme rather than the book. So let me try and explain what the book is actually about, as opposed to the minimum income guarantee. The standard view of capitalism is that capitalism is all about free markets, free and unfettered markets. And in actual fact, it's more than that. Right? So people recognize that capitalism is not just about markets, there's also a government to enforce contracts and property rights, and sometimes to regulate the markets also. But it's even more than that. First, the role of the government is far bigger than we think, even in what we think as free market societies. But also there is a neglected third pillar, which is extremely important to the success of capitalism. And that is what I call the community pillar. I will explain what I mean by community. Krishna has already given you a sense. But the community is very important because people aren't born into free markets. They grow up, they develop capabilities, and then they enter the labor force or start their businesses. That's when they enter the markets. And so there's a period of growing up. Where do you grow up? You grow up in the community. The community prepares you in many ways for the market. Second, when the markets fail, and there have been situations of serious downturn, the depressions, the recessions, what is there to bail you out? Well, over time, as I will argue, governments have erected safety nets, unemployment insurance, pensions, targeted income guarantee schemes. These are all structures that they've created over time to create a safety net below those who fall off. However, what happens when the safety net is not enough? When your unemployment insurance runs out, when you have no savings? 50% of Americans have no savings. What happens when you're left to your own devices? Well, at that point, you start going back to family, you go back to community, and hope that they will help you. And often they help you because the community that's part of the functions of the community. The third function of the community, which is important, is that it becomes the building block of democracy. That organization, especially on issues that affect people's lives, starts at the community level. And what I argue in the book is, through history, democracy has been very important to make the free market work for the broader population. And so, in some sense, there is a symbiosis between capitalism and democracy. It's rare that you find one and not the other. Think about it. How many socialist economies, truly socialist, I'm not talking about Sweden, truly socialist economies, that are also democratic? They will claim to be democratic. They were often the Social Democratic Republic of thus and such. But in reality, the extent of free speech, the extent of open voting, the extent of multi-party structures, rarely present in those countries. At the same time, think about how many capitalist countries you find that are not democratic. Again, you can count them maybe fingers of one hand. Singapore would claim it's democratic. You could argue that it's one party largely. Hong Kong, of course, since it's been taken over by the Chinese, is becoming less democratic. But apart from this, China is not really a capitalist economy. It's a state-dominated version, which we can talk about later. But when capitalism works for the many, because of democratic impulses, then the many, through democracy, support capitalism. And that creates a balance, which I would argue was the balance that created prosperity in the world after World War II. It was the liberal market democracy which emerged in industrial countries. And it is also something that could well be where we are going as a country today. But the question then has to be if this was what worked, and this may be what works for us, what went wrong? Why is it that there's so much angst today, political angst, especially in industrial countries? Why is the system not working anymore? That's really the focus of the book, and why we have these radical political movements, especially populist nationalism.